In Sparta, strength was the highest virtue and weakness was not tolerated. This applied to men and women alike, though for women, brutality took a uniquely merciless form. For women, every breath, every step, and every heartbeat was bound to the merciless logic of survival, reproduction, and service to the city. They were trained to endure, compelled to obey, and forced to embody the ideals of a society that valued strength above all else, even life itself. From the moment a Spartan girl was born, she was judged not for her beauty or her charm, but for the promise of her body. The question was, could she survive, and could she bear warriors? Spartan elders examined newborn girls with cold precision. If the infant appeared weak, deformed, or sickly, she faced the possibility of abandonment. The same fate that threatened unwanted boys, exposure on the slopes of Mount Taygetus, also loomed over those deemed unfit. Sparta did not nurture every life. Only the strong were allowed to live, and survival alone was an early mark of privilege. Childhood for Spartan girls was a relentless trial. Unlike other Greek city-states, where girls were shielded and kept indoors, Spartan girls were forced into physical rigor from a young age. They ran barefoot over rocky hills, wrestled each other, lifted heavy stones, and practiced endurance exercises in extreme heat and cold. Pain was not an obstacle, it was the standard. Weakness was punished with ridicule, isolation, or public shaming. Girls were taught to endure discomfort silently, for their bodies were not theirs. They belonged to Sparta, a vessel to produce the next generation of warriors. Discipline was merciless. A girl who faltered in training could be stripped of privileges or humiliated before her peers. The city instilled fear alongside strength. Every failure threatened not only her personal reputation, but her future role as a mother of warriors. In Sparta, motherhood was not a choice, it was an obligation. A woman's value was measured in sons, and only sons strong enough to fight and die gloriously could honor her life. Marriage rituals were steeped in austerity and secrecy. On her wedding night, a Spartan bride had her hair shaved, her clothing removed, and was dressed in garments resembling a young boy's attire. She waited in darkness, alone, while her husband, a young man still tied to his barracks and military training, entered briefly, spending the night in secrecy before leaving at dawn. For years, this cycle continued, a physical representation of the subjugation and isolation demanded by Spartan duty. Matrimony was not intimacy, it was ritualized service to the state. Pregnancy brought its own weight of expectation. A woman who bore weak children or failed to produce sons faced the scorn of society. Strength once again defined her worth. Yet Spartan women were paradoxically empowered. They could inherit land, manage estates, and wield influence over family resources. But freedom was conditional, bound entirely to Sparta's needs. Their authority existed to perpetuate the state, not to nurture individuality or personal desire. Death and grief were also measured by brutal standards. When sons fell in battle, mothers were expected to greet the news with stoicism. Excess mourning was considered shameful and a mark of weakness. Yet praise awaited those who held themselves erect, those who masked pain, and those who silently prepared their next son or future son for the battlefield. Spartan women internalized pain, transforming grief into an extension of duty. Even leisure, festivals, and public life were bound by the city's harsh principles. Girls ran openly in athletic competitions, often in the nude or wearing minimal clothing, to demonstrate strength and physical perfection. Unlike other Greek women, they were allowed and expected to cultivate muscle, agility, and courage. Foreigners marveled at their physicality and spoke of Spartan women with a mix of admiration and horror. Sparta's women were trained to be as formidable in the body as men, yet they faced constraints that men never did. Silence in marriage, fear of social disgrace, and constant scrutiny of their reproductive success. The brutal reality of Spartan life was not cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was systematic, relentless, and totalitarian in its precision. Strength was demanded, endurance enforced, and obedience drilled into every aspect of existence. Spartan women were soldiers without armor, tested from cradle to grave. Their bodies, their minds, their very lives were instruments of the state.